Yes, I have an emergency. I think I have somebody dead.
Okay, and who is it?
The Durmans.
Okay, and you're a neighbor or something?
Yes, I just came to check on them. They've been missing for about 4 days. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
They're both dead, Miss Wynn?
Did you find both of them? No.
Okay.
No, it's just one.
Okay.
I don't know where the other one is.
Located on the shore of Lake Oconee, 90 minutes east of Atlanta in rural Putnam County, Georgia, is the affluent gated community of Great Waters. Known for its world-class golf courses, luxury resort-style amenities, and million-dollar lakefront homes, it's a popular destination for well-to-do retirees looking to live out their golden years in comfort and surrounded by nature. It's a neighborly community where crime is rare and violent crime is almost unheard of. But on the morning of Tuesday, May 6th, 2014, a frantic 911 call comes into dispatchers from a Great Waters resident. She and her husband have just gone to check in on their friends and have discovered a crime so horrific, it's haunted the community ever since. I'm Steve French, and this is Unsolved Mysteries, Double Murder.
I was the second car on the scene. Of course, I drove as fast as I could drive from here out there, about 13 miles, I guess.
Howard Sills is the sheriff in Putnam County, Georgia, a position he's held for nearly 3 decades. At 10:15 a.m. on May 6, 2014, he arrives at the lakefront home of 88-year-old Russell Dermond and his 87-year-old wife, Shirley. Sheriff Sills has heard the 911 call and knows he's likely walking into a murder scene. But what he finds in the garage is a gruesome crime unlike anything he's ever investigated.
I knew something was terribly odd about this case when I realized Mr. Durman's head wasn't there. That's just a very odd set of circumstances. His body was laying supine. He was wearing a boxer shorts, a t-shirt, and a bathrobe. There's no blood present anywhere else, just the floor of the garage area where the body was.
Russell Dermond has been decapitated. His body left on the floor of his garage, his head nowhere to be found. Unsure if the assailant may still be in the house, investigators carefully search the 2-story home for any signs of the perpetrator or of Russell's wife, Shirley.
It wasn't a huge home, but it took us a few minutes to clear it, both levels of it. When I say clear it, going from room to room, checking closets and under beds, and, the totality of the home to clear it to make sure no one was there.
The search turns up no sign of either Russell's killer or Shirley Dermond. There's also no indication of forced entry or a struggle. In fact, if not for Russell Dermond's headless body in the garage, there's nothing to indicate a crime has even taken place here.
There's nothing at all disturbed in that house. There was no ransacking or anything like that. Nothing's disturbed. No sign of struggle. There's absolutely nothing that we know of that was taken from the house at all. Nothing. And there were certainly valuable things there to take. There were Rolex watches, in the dresser. Her purse was there, the keys were there, the cars were there.
As they photograph the scene, investigators note a newspaper crossword puzzle sitting completed on the kitchen table. An unopened newspaper is found lying in the driveway. They interview the neighbors that found Russell's body. Visibly shaken, the couple explained that 3 days earlier, on Saturday, the Dermonds were noticeably absent from a neighborhood event.
There was a Kentucky Derby party there in the Great Waters community that they had been invited to and said they were going to go to, and they didn't show up. One couple, contemporaries of theirs, who did go to the party, who called and check on them. By the time Tuesday came around, they thought, well, we better go over and check on them to make sure they're okay. They went in the house when nobody came to the door, opened the door, walked all through the house looking for them. And finally, the man went into the garage, and in between the two cars, you could see Mr. Durman's body. And then you had to walk all the way back there into the back of the cars to realize that he'd been decapitated.
Given the bizarre nature of the crime, Sheriff Sills quickly contacts the FBI to aid local authorities with the investigation. At the same time, he begins the grim task of contacting the Durman's children, who are spread out across several nearby states. Their youngest son, 59-year-old Brad Dermond, picks up the phone that afternoon and receives the shocking news.
We were at our son's baseball game, and I received a call from the deputy sheriff describing what was taking place. And obviously, at that stage in life, you expect to get that call, right? They were in their late 80s, had a great life, and you always have that anticipation. But it was something that you would never expect. That Dad was deceased, and then my mother was missing.
Brad immediately drives from his home in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, 6 hours to his parents' house on Lake Oconee. His sister Leslie and his brother Keith both meet him there, hoping to help authorities locate their mother and to get answers about their father's death.
All three of us went to the house, and then just the crime scene was in their garage, and so I was the only one that went into the garage. By the time we got there, they had removed Dad's torso, but by the garage door itself, it was really obvious, just plain as day, from the bloodstains that you could see what was taking place.
Brad is stunned by what he sees. The brutality of his father's murder makes no sense. He can't imagine why anyone would want to hurt his parents, who had always led relatively simple lives.
Mom was a housewife, very religious, enjoyed playing cards, played bridge, crossword puzzles, very analytical, had a great circle of friends. Dad was in the military, in the Navy, and before he went into service, he met Mom right before they were in college, and they met at that time, and just dated just the two of them and never dated outside of that relationship. They probably would be celebrating around 60 plus years of their wedding anniversary at this time. Dad was in the corporate world, primarily worked in data communications. We moved around, I guess, about 4 times during my childhood as a result of his career, but just the typical family.
Sheriff Sills speaks with Brad and his siblings, hoping to find any information that might help identify their father's killer and find their missing mother. Both cars are still in the garage, so it's clear that Shirley Durman didn't drive away from the scene. Brad informs Sheriff Sills that his mother is scheduled to have cataract surgery the following week. She also has difficulty walking up and down stairs, making it impossible for her to get far on foot.
Given her age and what infirmities she had, my thought obviously was that she had been abducted. We got her picture up on electronic billboards and things all over the state of Georgia and elsewhere. I also had to consider that there was a possibility that she had killed her husband and left, although given her age and all of those things, that was unlikely.
87-year-old Shirley Durman was last heard from on May 1st. She's described as 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighs 148 pounds. She has gray hair and blue eyes.
The Putnam County Sheriff's Office begins a massive search effort to locate Shirley Dermond. Deputies and cadaver dogs scour the wooded lots surrounding the home. Boats and divers fan out from the private dock, probing the secluded cove that leads to the vast waters of Lake Oconee.
We immediately set up probably one of the biggest mass interviews ever. It was myself and my people, along with about 20 FBI agents, and we set up a huge tent, invited everyone in the entire neighborhood to come. Everybody was interviewed over a period of several hours. I think we interviewed, 215 people. Obviously, we ran backgrounds on everybody we knew lived there.
While authorities believe Shirley Dermond was likely abducted, they doubt money was the motive, since they haven't received a demand for ransom. They monitor the Dermond's bank accounts, hoping a charge might show up that they can trace to find her location. A $20,000 reward is quickly offered for information in the case, and Brad and his siblings wait anxiously for updates.
Our hope is that Mom was still alive, obviously, but based on what took place with our dad, we knew that she was not in a good place either. We thought maybe she was just abducted, and that was kind of our hope, that we'd hear from her again.
Given the extreme violence of Russell Dermond's murder, the case attracts national media attention to this typically sleepy community. With each passing day, the pressure mounts on Sheriff Sills to find Shirley Dermond. Deputies tirelessly search the 20-mile length of Lake Oconee on land and water, hoping to find a clue to her whereabouts.
I had my patrol boats on that lake looking for anything. And eventually some fishermen spotted a body and called in. They did not get close enough to tell whether it was a man or a woman or whatever, but they got close enough to tell they thought it was a body, and then obviously we responded immediately.
It is a body. The body of Shirley Dermond. It's been 13 days since she disappeared, and she's been found floating in Lake Oconee, nearly 6 miles from her home in Great Waters.
I'm the person that actually removed Ms. Dermond's body out of the lake. I did it personally. And she was fully dressed. She had been hit in the head multiple times, at least 2 times, maybe 3 times, according to the pathologist, with some sort of blunt object like a hammer. And whatever it was penetrated her skull. And that's a pretty violent attack on an 87-year-old woman.
The severity of Shirley Dermond's wounds isn't the only thing Sheriff Sills finds shocking. As he pulls her body from the lake, he discovers she's been tied to a mesh bag that contains 2 30-pound cement blocks. The bag has been attached to Shirley's legs using a parachute cord.
Whoever killed her didn't want her body to be found and never thought it would be. Yet whoever killed her was not experienced enough to know that the 60 pounds wasn't going to keep that body beneath the surface, that it was still going to rise after decomposition. So that's not an indication of some very sophisticated killer here.
The discovery of Shirley's body is both heartbreaking and perplexing for the Dermond children. But it solves one of the mysteries of this case, confirming that both Russell and Shirley met with foul play. Now investigators must find their killers, and they start by constructing a timeline of the events that led up to the murders.
The last time anyone saw Shirley Durman would have been the Wednesday before they were murdered. She went to the local bridge club. And we know that Mr. Durman went to the grocery store and the drugstore on the Thursday before. We watched him shop on video, and he got some prescriptions filled for his wife. They were still present there in the kitchen, but that was the last time anyone saw him.
I spoke to them on a Thursday afternoon. It was just a typical conversation, sorting through our daily activities, but if there was a concern or a threat of any kind, it definitely would have been brought up in the conversation, and that did not happen.
With Brad's phone call and the grocery store surveillance video, investigators know the Dermonds were still alive on Thursday afternoon. But when exactly did the murders occur? The completed crossword puzzle investigators found on the kitchen table was from Friday's newspaper, indicating they were still alive on Friday morning. Investigators found Saturday's paper laying unopened on the driveway, and the Dermonds never showed up to the Kentucky Derby party that day and didn't respond to calls on Sunday or Monday. So Sheriff Sills speculates the murders must have taken place sometime on either Friday or early Saturday. Brad Dermond, knowing his parents as well as he does, helps investigators narrow down the day to Friday.
Dad was still in his PJs, but he would not necessarily be in his street clothes. It could be lunchtime before he would begin his day outside of the house. So the fact that he was still in his pajamas didn't really zero in on a time frame. But Mom, she almost always did crossword puzzles from the newspaper, and she had completed that. They make their bed up on a pretty regular basis as soon as they get up, so that was already done as well. So the best we could tell would be like late morning.
Regardless of exactly when the Dermonds were killed, investigators believe that the couple may have known their killer. There were no signs of a break-in. The Dermonds' alarm system didn't indicate there was an intrusion, and the screen door on the side of the house was found unlocked. Brad thinks a stranger could have easily entered the house since his parents didn't worry too much about security.
There was no forced entry, but they very often leave their door open from their kitchen into the screen patio. So somebody could have just approached and just walked right in without ringing a doorbell or being let in or that kind of thing.
Whoever the killer was, getting into the Dermonds' house would have been much less challenging than getting into their neighborhood. Great Waters is a private, gated community and one of the more exclusive neighborhoods in Georgia. Sheriff Sills hopes the neighborhood security cameras may have recorded something out of the ordinary.
There's a gate that you have to go in to get into the property. If you're not a property owner or the property owner hasn't authorized you to enter, then obviously you can't go in. It's not open to the public. There's a typical guard gatehouse like you have in neighborhoods like that, and it is staffed with private security personnel.
None of the guards recall seeing anything suspicious, and the gatehouse security cameras proved to be of no help either.
We found out that there'd been a storm and the recorder had been knocked out. The video feed to the monitors was still there, so you could see, people coming and going, but it hadn't recorded anything, I think, in 18 days.
Whether or not they knew the surveillance system was damaged, gaining access to Great Waters through the guarded main gate would be risky for any criminal. But there is another way the killer could have accessed the Dermonds' property while avoiding neighborhood security altogether, from the waters of Lake Oconee.
They lived on a deep water lake, so they had a dock on the lake accessible to really anywhere. Lake Oconee is a very large lake, so all sorts of access points. And in the lake itself, there's some boat traffic, but they're in a kind of a secluded cove, so probably 4 homes would be served by this cove. My thought is either they initially accessed by boat or the total access and exit was by boat.
As Brad Dermond surveys the property looking for clues, he notices a small detail that supports his suspicion that the killer accessed the house from the dock.
They have a concrete sidewalk that serves the house all the way down to the dock. There was a pretty obvious scrape from the house. When I was there, it certainly looked like it was fresh. So it appeared that they used something, the wheelbarrow or whatever. Our folks were in their late 80s, so it's not like they would be doing yard work or, doing something that would have given cause to that.
Only the roofline of the Dermonds' home is visible from the street. Nestled down a slope between 2 undeveloped lots, the privacy and stunning lake view made it an ideal location for a peaceful retirement. But Sheriff Sills suspects it may have also provided their killer with the cover needed to avoid detection.
These are wooded lots. I guess the average lot is half an acre to an acre. We had a witness from another house that actually saw somebody walking in the yard the day that we think this happened. But because of the foliage, the witness couldn't tell if it was a man simply because of the stride he was taking, but I never saw his face. I couldn't tell you what race the person was or length of their hair or anything. I could just see somebody through the trees walking in the yard.
The lack of forensic evidence found in the Dermond home makes investigators wonder if Russell and Shirley were even killed in their home. If not, then where is the crime scene?
I don't think that Mrs. Durman was killed at the home. And the reason for that is because the trauma to her head that resulted in her dying. She was hit with something like a hammer that literally penetrated the skull. There should have been some cast-off blood somewhere on the ceiling or something like that in the garage or elsewhere in the house, and it wasn't there. So that's what makes me think that she potentially was killed somewhere else other than the home.
Several weeks after the murders, investigators finally received the results of the Durman's autopsies. They confirmed that the decapitated body is definitely Russell's. His head had been removed post-mortem, severed by a very clean cut using a sharp knife or similar instrument. Russell's body had no fatal wounds or other indications of what had killed him. By process of elimination, the cause of death is listed as cranial cerebral trauma, or an as-yet unknown head wound. A severe cut is discovered on Russell's left index finger, extending down to the palm of his hand. It's bloody, and tangled in the blood are strands of Shirley's blonde hair, a possible clue to what may have happened during a struggle between Russell and the person attacking his wife.
Mr. Durman, of course, we're not sure. We think he was shot to death simply because the lab found some gunshot residue on his shirt. I can't completely eliminate that because Mr. Durman had a squirrel problem. They were getting into his house through the soffit and things like that, and occasionally he went outside and shot a squirrel. So I guess it's possible that he had some gunshot residue on his T-shirt from that. But the fact that his head's gone and we've got gunshot residue makes me think that the head was taken to conceal evidence, in my opinion. I'm fairly confident that he was decapitated in the garage because there was blood and a spot of it that would have been consistent with the head after being severed. They sat it down on the concrete floor. The blood and the fluid and things like that had flowed out from the rest of the body. There were some towels. Those were used to keep the decomp fluid or blood from flowing out of the garage to the street. Did this. Didn't want that blood to come out from under that garage, let somebody see it.
The blood in the garage, the lack of any blood spatter patterns, makes Sheriff Sills suspect that Russell Dermond was killed somewhere else. Why he was brought to the garage to be decapitated is unknown, but a clue found near the body suggests the killer may not have been familiar with the Dermonds' home.
There was a lamp that was moved from
be decapitated is unknown, but a clue found near the body suggests the killer may not have been familiar with the Dermonds' home.
There was a lamp that was moved from the den to the garage. I believe the lamp was used to illuminate the decapitation process. And the lamp was still on when we went into the garage. We had a little trouble ourselves locating the light switch for the interior of the garage. So I presume that the perpetrator had the same trouble we did, and that's why they got that lamp.
Shirley Durman's autopsy confirms that she died from the violent blows to her head. The level of decomposition places her death at roughly the same time as her husband's, and it's confirmed that she was already dead before the 60 pounds of concrete anchored her to the bottom of Lake Oconee.